Who are these guys, and why are they in my house? With the power vested in us with our content creator and panelist badges, we had an agenda at Anime Week in Atlanta to hand out a fiscally irresponsible amount of trading cards and Beyblades to advertise exactly one thing. With the technological miracle of pre-recording, you can witness that now.
All right, time to talk about that titular genre that nobody knows anything about. Hobby Annie, am I right? Am I right? Okay, so I take it that nobody actually knows what it is yet, which is a good place to start, because that's the point of this. So, Peggy, would you like to take this?
So, not even AniList is really familiar with this. The English-speaking anime websites, nobody uses this term. I know AniList has a term called proxy battle, which is, almost it, but,
With proxy battle being defined as, proxy battle is a battle where humans use creatures/robots to do the fighting for them, either by commanding them, those creatures or robots, or by simply evolving them or changing them into battle.
That's not real. And pardon my language, a bit silly. Let's talk about long run.
Okay. We need to redefine this for the Western audience because Japan has already had a name for this genre for a long, long time. What is hobby anime? Briefly put, just like the Japanese loaned the word animation to shorten to anime to refer to moving cartoons, and we loaned that loan word back to refer to Japanese cartoons, they have the word hobby anime, which has the loan word hobby. Now, this is a bit different from how we use hobby, which we'll explain more later. But in the wide part, it can still mean something that you do and you enjoy and you spend time with, but it's also a industry marketing term, which usually gets applied to a product, like the Digimon, the Yu-Gi-Oh, etc. Hobby anime is anime about these hobby franchises, which essentially boiled down to 22-minute long toy commercials that happen to be really good sometimes. But not every 22-minute toy commercial about a product is hobby anime. There are rules, which we will explain more later on, but we have made a chart which goes into the basics of it. We made categories, plastics, cards, monster collections, which we'll explain further on, and each of these shows usually neatly organizes into one of these types.
There are hobby anime that you all know. These are foundational human society and much of our cultural references. They are not the be-all, end-all, or even most of all the hobby anime genre, but you know these. If you don't know all of them, you know at least one of them.
So the actual genre itself started forming in the 70s, influenced by sports anime. While not technically hobby anime itself, Game Center Arashi Koro Koro manga, you're going to be hearing that word a lot, about a child who played arcade games and went gamer mode while doing so. He would spam click games by launching a spinning top onto the buttons, and that would turn into a turbo button if you remember those. Sometimes he would move his hands fast enough that they would start on fire. Sometimes he would break the cycle of samsara and gain a third eye and start floating. It was some pretty cool stuff, and he would do this while playing, Space Invaders or whatever was popular at the time. In the 80s, we move on to things like Plares Sanshiro, which is a series about pro wrestling with animatronic model kits, which is pretty close to a hobby anime series, but they never actually released toys for this, so it doesn't really count, but it set a lot of the ground rules. Pretty close to that. A year later, they made a manga called Plamo Kyoshiro, which I would say confidently is the first one that's actually a hobby anime because it's the same kind of concept, except that they're using Gundam model kits in a virtual world to fight each other. But not just Gundam model kits, any Bandai model kit. So this is ye old Gundam Build Fighters, if you've ever seen that show. And this became Kodansha's main money earner for a while. So it is the grandfather of all hobby anime and making money off of 22-minute long toy commercials. Finally, the first hobby anime that's an actual anime and not just a manga is Dash Yonkuro, based off of actually the Koro Koro manga this time. It's a series about racing Tamiya four-wheel drive cars, which are little cars that you build as model kits and then you put it on a track and they go vroom, 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 vroom. boom, and it's really fast and fun. And with this, the rest of the genre is a winning run. That's a reference to Tamiya four-wheel drive, but I don't think anyone would get it, so I feel the need to annotate it. So, now we really set the foundation in the 1990s.
In the 90s, when anime and Japanese toys started becoming a normalness cultural export, slightly before the boom of series that reached America, there were two incredibly influential manga and anime series. The Vrooming Brothers' Let's and Go and Rapid Fire Marble Blast Super Beat 'em On, another series about mini four-wheel drive cars and marble shooters, respectively. These anime would codify a lot of tropes and toy gimmicks we would see in future hobby series.
Then, in 1996, you know this guy. I don't have to say his name. You know what happened then. A company found out that they could make a lot of money and then would continue to make a lot of money for the rest of known time. The largest media franchise of all time would eventually make its way to almost every other country on Earth and bring with it anything that media companies thought that they could slap it on and make a similar amount of money. And thus, the era of Hobby Annie was really born.
After the largest known media franchise of all time, there was two that were pretty close. Yu-Gi-Oh!, a variety game manga which became about its own card game after its chapter on card games became so popular enough to make card game sales go up in general in Japan. Not conceived as a hobby Annie, but basically kind of just fell into being one over time. And Bakuten Shoot Beyblade, a series originally conceived as a video game toy hybrid with a highlight on collecting monsters, and then exclusively became about plastic and metal spinning tops.
Essentially, Beyblade started off as a riff on that really popular one, and then Yu-Gi-Oh!, because it featured a card game in its manga, and some franchise had a really popular card game that it advertised essentially, since Yu-Gi-Oh! Didn't have a card game at the time, they both kind of shifted into their own niches. Here's some other stuff that you might know. Point, see if you can find something you like. These aren't the only influential ones, or even the ones that you know. As it turned out, people really liked these shows because the toy that they played with was also on screen being used as a similar toy, and it worked as a really effective marketing mechanism. So they made 1 million of them.
And it's not even just Japan that makes these. Many series from many countries sought to emulate the Hobby Annie magic. Like, there's American shows, there was Canadian shows, Italian, South Korean, Chinese, Australian, French, any place you could think of has probably made their own Hobby Annie at some point.
Now, to dig into more of the technical stuff, how do they define the hobby part of hobby anime in Japan? It has to be about a hobby, which again is defined as something kind of different in Japan since it's a loan word. Hobby usually refers to high quality collectibles like model kits, collectible object games, or any personality piece with some kind of social aspect or like a display component. And the hobbies in hobby media are branded like objects and experiences that you can buy in stores. More than the traditional idea of like knitting or sports or like stamp collecting, a hobby in a hobby anime has to be something really specific and probably really branded.
This is a short aside. A lot of our information about the history of competitive hobby toys comes from Kyoganken, a hobby archive started by blogger Setano in 2003 and is still running in the modern day. It's like the Library of Alexandria for hobby toys in Japan. Back to our regularly scheduled programming.
In order to make it easier to identify hobby anime, we've made a few core principles that are completely arbitrary, made up by us, and are vaguely based off of a bunch of Japanese forum posts we've read over the years, and the vibe that we've noticed. And we've made these to kind of differentiate them from, say, normal merchandise-driven media. So, the items or activities in the shows are abstractions of the real-world hobbies they represent. Pocket Monsters has multiple formats to catch, trade, and battle monsters, especially in Japan where there's a lot more merchandise, somehow. In Yu-Gi-Oh!, they play Yu-Gi-Oh! Yes, I know it's not called Yu-Gi-Oh! In Yu-Gi-Oh!, but I know a lot of things about Yu-Gi-Oh! I think I've earned the right to say it just this once. And, of course, in Gundam Build Fighters, they participate in gunpla battles that rely on, like, real-life gunpla building techniques. They have scenes in the show where they just build the real-life model kits and they paint them how they would in real life, and the gunpla battle relies on how well they built it or painted it. So it's like a direct comparison to, say, entering your model kit in a model kit building competition, just made a little bit more exciting for the anime.
So basically, the series has to have a real-world hobby to participate in that is the marketed product. It is a mixed media project with parallels to the release structure of the product in real life. Examples include Beyblade Burst, seasons 1, 2, and 7, don't know what's going on with 2 through 6, is a sports anime that is also a hobby anime. Beyblade is a product owned by Takara Tomy. You could buy a Beyblade from the show, usually in a similar time span to that episode's release. This is the business plan. Hikaru no Go, Kuroko no Basket, and Yakitate Japan are not hobby anime. They are shows where people have a hobby, the English word, not a hobby, the Japanese marketing lingo and loan word. Even Chihayafuru, I feel like I always get that one wrong.
Yeah, even Chihayafuru, which revitalized a Japanese card game called Karuta, which is about reading out poetry and touching a card that finishes the poem, isn't hobby anime because it's
not a mixed media project.
It's not a mixed media project.
Hikaru no Go released video games and branded Go sets, but they were just branded merch and they were not planned to be cross-media.
And for Yakitate Japan, I imagine that you could buy bread in like a 7-Eleven. That show was about baking bread. The bread looked good, but I don't think it was real. You could visit a bakery in real life, but there wasn't Yakitate Japan bakeries that you're supposed to buy the bread that they baked that week in the episode. And other things that aren't hobby anime. Slug Terra is a show that has the vibe like it would be one, but it didn't have toys that were supposed to be representative of the little slugs that they shot out in the actual series, which were the collectible monsters and that. And the cross-media push wasn't decided at the very beginning. It's just a show that happened to have toys made after it. Battle Darts was a Bandai toy from 2003, which was like Beyblades, but if they were darts. That's getting closer to like what a hobby Annie could be, but there's no Annie. There's no supporting media except for some little manga in the instruction manuals. Magic the Gathering is sometimes a hobby Annie. In these cases, it would be the initial few volumes of a manga called Duel Masters, which became about its own card game later on, but started out as a Magic the Gathering advertising machine, and Destroy All Humans, They Can't Be Regenerated, the award-winning rom-com, which I sense some of you in the front row seem to like. Oh, you love that one. And now to get on to a case of a little bit iffy, Transformers. Ce n'est pas Optimus Prime. The Transformers in the show aren't supposed to be the Transformers that you can buy in real life. The things that you buy in real life are action figures that look like your best friend, Optimus Prime. It's not like how the Beyblades and Beyblades are supposed to be Beyblades that you buy in stores, or the Bakugan and Bakugan are supposed to be the Bakugan that you buy in stores, minus the turning into monsters part. And in Transformers, there's not really a hobby being done except for, like, maybe war crimes. So it doesn't quite count.
Because people like categorization, we've made 3 completely arbitrary and mostly meaningless subcategories to place hobby anime under. While the Japanese fandom will often define more, we're lone warning hobby anime today, and that means we get to define it however we want. And that means stealing from women. And I can do that as a woman. The magical girl genre is often defined with 3 types. And if it's good enough for Gemini or holograms, it's good enough for us. These genres we're using today aren't really strict definitions as much as they are vibe-based. Just every label is made to put a box around a very vague, nebulous concept. Our 3 labels for today are Monster Collection, Card Game, and Plastics.
So, starting off with our vague kind of vocabulary that's more of a tool to help you define shows that you see on the television. we have Moncole, also called Monster Collection, also called Character Collection. The reason why we call it Moncole a lot of the time is because there's two really important Monster Collection series in Japan that also got shortened to Moncole, so it just happened to work out that way. The series is about, collecting, or the genre rather, is about collecting and raising colorful characters as some sort of central collector character. Like, if you were in Digimon, you would be in a show about befriending and raising your Digimon partner as a Digimon tamer. Or if you were talking about something like Inazuma 11, you would be collecting little colorful characters for your little soccer club as a soccer club manager. The tie-in products are often something like V-Pets and video games, but can also sometimes be card games or collectible toys. You can kind of see where the line starts to meld together here. And the emphasis of this subgenre is really connecting to these sub-creatures or characters that you're collecting, and that bond between them and the bond between the other people who are raising their own and helping each other go through those character arcs together. Here are some popular examples applicable to the space, and by popular examples I mean ones that I liked and chose. We have Digimon Beat Break, which the dub just got announced, which is pretty rare for a Digimon series.
Yeah, dub got just announced, and they're also advertising in Times Square today. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, rare Digimon W. We have Inazuma 11, which is a Level 5 video game series, an anime series about collecting funny little guys to play soccer with each other. We have Yokai Watch, which is about collecting little ghosts and to help people's problems, battle them against each other, and maybe, I don't know, torture the little mascot character Whisper in some various different ways. Like put him into a real torture chamber, just squish him around a bit, throw him at the wall until he makes a loud thud. That one, the big one.
Card games. They play card games. The auxiliary media includes card games, card game simulators, arcade games that are just card games. Sometimes they're about strategy board games, which are card games with extra pieces. Here are some select card game anime on screen. For sick freaks asking where Duel Masters is, they told me I wasn't allowed to put it in.
We have to limit ourselves somehow.
Yeah.
It's about give and take. And toys and plastics. The primary focus is on toys! Yay! So, the reason why we call it plastics is because these are generally plastic, but can use other materials such as cardboard and metal. The kind of thesis of this is that sometimes there's a card game tied to it, sometimes there's a larger game with other pieces and written rules to it, but it's mostly about focusing on the physicality of the object and the fact that it exists in 3D space. And the integrated gimmicks to these, and the different ways it uses materials like rubber and stuff to influence the game. The play patterns can include swapping parts between things or swapping members of the team. Like in Beyblade, you can make a deck of 3 Beyblades and swap them out, and also swap out the parts of each Beyblade. In something like Mini 4-wheel drive, you can tune the parts, work on the motors to make them faster, lubricate axles and stuff, and change out parts to make sure that the weight distribution is correct. It's about kind of honing that kind of process. The tie-in media can be toys or video games that interface with those toys. And of course there's Beyblade, Beat 'em On, Crush Gear. That's one where the cars fight each other like professional wrestlers. And then there's a really interesting one that I just wanted to highlight. Marvel Disc Wars is a series where every single Marvel superhero and villain got turned into a Pog. Does anyone remember what Pogs are? Yeah, so they got turned into little discs, and then children started to have to deploy them like they were Bakugan or Yu-Gi-Oh cards in order to fight the villains. And I think that's a really silly concept.
Of course, since these genres are played fast and loose, there are series that jump genres a bit. Bakugan was a monster collection series that was also a card game and a toy series at different parts of its lifespan. Mazuka Party was a series about scratch-off trading cards that was played part in a card game and a virtual pet with plastic peripherals. Snack World was a dungeon-crawling RPG with NFC-compatible toys of collectible monsters. Donball Senkai, or LBX for the Nicktoon viewers, was a model-building series and battling toy, a board game, and a monster collection video game.
And sometimes Donball Senki was just a Gundam. Sometimes, you gotta stop the Prime Minister of Japan from being assassinated. Real episode in a children's cartoon. They were going to assassinate him with a little robot. Cool! Now, of course, if Hobby Annie is its own genre, it has to have its own genre tropes. There's the red or blue main dude, who usually has a pointier rival and softer friends. The reason why they're mainly red or blue colored is because kids really like those bright primary colors. It's like jingling keys. Wait, where's my fushigi? Pretend I'm doing a fushigi right now. That's awesome. Of course, this implies there's the power of friendship. Hoot and holler for the power of friendship. I love my friends! And, of course, color-coded creatures because, sometimes you just like the green one. There's a partner, insert marketable item here, which may or may not be different from the mascot marketable item or the evil marketable item. Here we have our own very original character, Deki, that doesn't come from anything and we own all the copyrights to and isn't stolen from Duel Masters 2017. He's ours now. He's like a mascot character, hooray! And that's Heki, who's an evil version of Deki. Because, if you sell a recolor of the main guy who's evil, it turns out to sell a lot of things. Why do you think they put Spider-Man in the symbiote suit so often? Why do you think there's a reverse Flash?
Everyone loves Shadow the Hedgehog.
Shadow the Hedgehog is everyone's lover. Don't try this at home. Oftentimes in these shows, they'll use the toys in maybe unrealistic or unresponsible ways. Like in Beyblade, where they destroy the supports on a stadium that's a giant dome, and then it rolls down the streets, destroying the entire city of New York City.
The Destroyer Dome just going around the whole entirety of New York.
Or my favorite example is in Let's and Go, that car racing anime. They had a message at the end of each episode that was play with mini four-wheel drives in a safe place. And they will often put this over footage of it driving over like a volcano or tipping over some lantern oil and setting a hillside on fire. Or there was one episode where they were rescuing kids from a river by sending out their mini four-wheel drive cars and then roping them back. So only play with your toys in safe places, guys. Don't be risky about this. And of course, let's settle this with a battle where all conflict can be solved with playing toys. Sometimes they make like an excuse for this. Like sometimes, like if you declare a toy battle, if you don't accept, you'll lose your soul. Or sometimes some guy's just really confident that he can beat you in a game of cards. So yeah, I'll like stake my mortgage on this. I'll just win. And if you lose, you got to go away because I do not like you, which is a completely fair trade. Which also leads into toy-based socioeconomics, where everything in the world just happens to revolve around toys, and cities are named after the toy, and all of human culture happens to have history tie-ins with these toys, like say Moses parting the Red Sea with a Beyblade, or the ancient cat people in Battle Beat-em-on designing ancient beat-em-on that function as booby traps and temples. And of course, since it's the entire world socioeconomics, there's big tournaments where you can win a lot of money or a lot of prestige. And oftentimes you'll go around the world in these tournaments. And of course, adults who end up creating child soldiers. It's just a common theme in these series that sometimes a guy will think, what if I just make a child so evil with a toy so powerful that he can take over the world? I'll do this instead of investing in a 401k. Yes. And oftentimes the show is another genre, like a sports show or a comedy show. Sometimes there are battle shonen. Metal Fight Beyblade is just what if Goku had a Beyblade, pretty much. Because, Hobby Annie is technically a genre because it's become one over the years, but it's also, a marketing framework. So these shows have different inspirations.
So basically, in conclusion, Hobby is not one-to-one with Hobby, and it technically means its own thing, and it's different from merchandise-driven media. It needs to actually portray how you play with those toys in real life in the media. And our 3 types are cards, toys, and Moncalé. Remember, this is going to be on the test. And this is, completely subjective, like all genres, so we technically, are just making things up right now. But you need to always remember the 3Ds.
The Daft Bros are never wrong. The Daft Bros are always right, and always listen to the Daft Bros.
Exactly.
2 dumb girls telling each other exactly. And one of them is a boy.
La 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 la.